January 1943. The morning mist clings to the jagged coastline of a small, unremarkable island in the Pacific. Waves crash silently against black rocks, leaving behind a scattering of shells, debris, and the occasional forgotten fishing net. A solitary figure moves with deliberate care, stooping to pick up each shell as if cataloging a hidden story written in sand and salt. He is not a soldier, nor a spy, but a simple beachcomber, his fingers calloused from years of sun and tide. Each shell he collects is examined, turned over in his hand, its shape and markings memorized. To anyone else, they are remnants of the sea, ordinary fragments of nature. But he sees patterns, subtle repetitions, arrangements shaped by human hands. Unknown to the world, this quiet ritual is about to uncover something extraordinary. The layout of hundreds of Japanese coastal mines, a hidden network that could determine the fate of entire naval operations. The ocean whispers secrets few can hear. And today, this unassuming observer will listen and record what no map or report has revealed. The shoreline waits, silent, as his discovery begins. By early 1943, the Pacific War had entered a critical phase. The Japanese Empire, stretched across thousands of miles of islands and coastlines, relied heavily on fortified positions and naval defenses to protect its holdings. From the Philippines to the Solomon Islands, every inlet, bay, and shallow channel was a potential battleground. For the Allied forces, understanding these defenses was crucial. Every hidden mine, every barbed wire barricade, every camouflaged gun emplacement could determine whether a naval assault would succeed or fail. Naval mines were a silent, invisible threat. Deployed in coastal waters, they were designed to explode on contact, or triggered by magnetic or acoustic sensors. Unlike open combat, where soldiers could see their enemies, Ines worked quietly, leaving no sign of their presence until disaster struck. Japanese engineers had perfected these defenses, creating patterns that were as much art as science, arranging mines in clusters, staggered lines, or irregular grids to maximize destruction. Intelligence on these minefields was scarce. Aerial reconnaissance provided some information, but dense foliage, tides, and weather often concealed the full layout. Reports from captured documents or prisoner interrogations offered partial clues. Yet even these sources were incomplete. Mines were constantly repositioned, replaced, or camouflaged. On the ground, local fishermen and islanders occasionally noticed anomalies. Shells scattered in unusual formations, currents behaving strangely, buoys missing, but their observations were often dismissed as coincidence. Amid this uncertainty, unconventional methods became invaluable. One civilian, living on the fringes of war, developed an approach that would bridge the gap between observation and actionable intelligence. The beachcomber's method was deceptively simple. Collect, catalog, and analyze every shell and fragment washed ashore. Shells fired from naval guns, artillery, or even anti-aircraft weapons left telltale markings. The size, weight, and trajectory of each shell could suggest the type of weapon used, the direction of fire, and, most importantly, the positions of nearby defenses. By systematically recording these details over weeks and months, patterns began to emerge. What once appeared as random debris revealed the invisible lines of Japanese coastal fortifications. The environment itself aided his work. Islands in the Pacific were shaped by tides, currents, and storms, which naturally carried shells from the waters to the shore. Each morning, as the tide receded, new fragments appeared, offering a constantly updated snapshot of maritime activity. Unlike military reconnaissance, which could be delayed by weather or enemy detection, the Beachcomber operated unnoticed, free to observe continuously. His presence was as inconspicuous as the rising sun, yet the data he gathered would become crucial for naval planners. Historical records confirm the scale of the Japanese mine-laying effort. By 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy had deployed thousands of mines across strategic points, from the Philippines to New Guinea. Coastal defenses were reinforced with bunkers, searchlights, and barbed wire, often coordinated with artillery batteries. Allied naval operations faced high risk. In some regions, ships struck mines within minutes of entering a harbor. The challenge was clear. Without accurate maps of these underwater threats, even the most powerful fleets were vulnerable. Local knowledge, often overlooked, became a force multiplier. Islanders, fishermen, and occasional civilians had long observed the subtle signs of naval activity. A shell lying unusually far from a known gun position, the pattern of tidal debris, or the repeated presence of certain fragments could hint at enemy tactics. The Beachcomber, attuned to these signals, treated each shell as a puzzle piece. Over time, what seemed like random drift and chance began to reveal an intricate, deliberate design. Lines of mines, arranged in ways that only someone tracking the evidence daily could detect. This approach combined patience, observation, and a careful recording system. Sketches of shell positions, notations on weight and type, and the correlation of tidal patterns allowed the Beachcomber to create a map of inferred mine locations. He did not possess advanced instruments or military training, yet his method produced intelligence that rivaled formal reconnaissance. By January 1943, after months of meticulous work, the patterns of over 300 Japanese coastal mines had been inferred, a staggering achievement, entirely the result of civilian observation and ingenuity. This quiet accumulation of data would soon intersect with active military operations. The shell patterns were not merely academic, they were actionable intelligence. Naval officers, faced with the challenge of moving ships safely through enemy-controlled waters, would rely on these insights to plan landings, evacuations, and strikes. The consequences of one man's patient attention to detail would ripple across the Pacific, saving lives and shaping strategic decisions. The shoreline, seemingly ordinary to a casual observer, had become a repository of vital wartime intelligence. Every fragment carried information. Every pattern told a story. And from this story, the invisible defenses of the Japanese Empire began to reveal themselves. The Japanese coastal minefields of the Pacific were more than simple barriers. They were carefully engineered systems designed to protect key ports, anchorages, and supply routes. Each mine was placed with intent, often in staggered lines or clusters, to maximize destruction while confusing enemy reconnaissance. Variations in depth, triggering mechanism, and spacing made their detection nearly impossible from the air. Magnetic, acoustic, and pressure-sensitive mines added layers of complexity, creating zones where any naval vessel could be instantly disabled. For Allied forces, understanding these defenses was not a theoretical exercise. It was a matter of life and death. Traditional reconnaissance had its limits. Aerial photography could identify harbors, docks, and shore installations, but the underwater placement of mines remained largely hidden. Submarine reconnaissance offered closer observation, but carried immense risk. Surveying teams risked triggering a mine with every misstep, while enemy patrols actively hunted for such probes. As a result, intelligence was fragmented, often arriving too late to prevent losses. In this context, alternative methods became critical. Observers like the Beachcomber provided a unique advantage: continuous, ground-level data collection that supplemented formal military reconnaissance. The Beachcomber's method relied on meticulous attention to detail. Each shell, whether a fragment from Japanese coastal artillery or a washed-up naval round, was catalogued with precise notes on size, markings, and origin. Over weeks, patterns began to emerge. Certain shells consistently appeared along specific stretches of beach, suggesting repeated firing from fixed positions. Differences in weight and composition revealed the types of weapons employed. Correlating these findings with tides and currents allowed the Beachcomber to infer the approximate location of hidden mines. Historical records indicate that Japanese minefields were often deployed in a networked fashion, creating overlapping zones of hazard. Some mines were laid in allow waters to damage smaller patrol boats, while others were sunk in deeper channels to target larger warships. The Imperial Japanese Navy coordinated these deployments with coastal batteries and searchlights, creating defensive grids that were highly effective at deterring enemy action. For a single observer on the shore, detecting such a network required an unusual combination of persistence, analytical thinking, and patience. In many ways, the Beachcomber functioned as an unofficial intelligence agent. His observations mirrored the work of military reconnaissance units, but were continuous, adaptive, and unimpeded by enemy detection. While official reports might take days or weeks to compile, shell fragments arrived with each tide, providing a rolling stream of data. Even weather events, storms, and shifting sands became allies, revealing previously hidden shells and providing new clues about the enemy's positions. The accuracy of this civilian method is supported by post-war analyses. Allied naval reports confirmed that many minefields along key Japanese-held coastlines were mapped with surprising precision, sometimes before formal reconnaissance units could confirm their locations. In some cases, the intelligence gathered through simple observation allowed naval planners to avoid mine-heavy zones entirely, saving ships and crews from destruction. Such civilian contributions, while rarely celebrated, played a meaningful role in the broader strategic picture of the Pacific War. By early 1943, the Beachcomber's routine had matured into a systematic practice. Sketches and notes were compiled into charts, showing inferred mine placements along several kilometers of coastline. Over 300 individual mines were mapped indirectly, each one represented by a combination of shell evidence, tidal analysis, and pattern recognition. For the Allied forces, this information offered unprecedented insight into Japanese defensive operations, allowing them to anticipate potential threats and adjust strategies accordingly. This method also demonstrated the broader principle that intelligence in wartime could emerge from unexpected sources. While soldiers and officers gathered reports, civilians observing the environment could uncover patterns invisible to those bound by conventional methods. In the Pacific theater, where the environment itself was often as dangerous as the enemy, such ingenuity became a crucial force multiplier. The culmination of this work would soon intersect with active military operations. Naval commanders preparing for landings or patrols would rely on these insights to navigate safely through heavily mined waters. The Beachcomber, acting alone, had transformed what appeared to be random debris into actionable intelligence, influencing the conduct of the war in subtle but significant ways. As the tides continued their quiet rhythm along the shoreline, the invisible lines of Japanese mines had begun to take shape on paper. What had once been a deadly unknown now held secrets that could be read by the observant eye. This convergence of human patience, natural observation, and analytical rigor set the stage for a series of discoveries that would alter the course of localized naval operations and highlight the extraordinary impact of one individual's careful attention to detail. The man who walked the shores was unremarkable to most, a solitary figure, with a weathered hat, rolled-up sleeves, and a notebook tucked under his arm. Yet beneath this quiet exterior lay an extraordinary mind, attuned to subtle details others ignored. Each morning, he rose before dawn, wading along the water's edge, eyes scanning for shells, fragments, and driftwood. To him, these objects were not refuse. They were messages sent by the tides carrying information about human activity offshore. Over time, his daily observations developed into a methodical routine, cataloging the size, markings, and location of each shell. Patience became his greatest weapon. Unlike soldiers in combat, he faced no immediate threats, yet his work was fraught with invisible danger. One misstep could bring him into contact with unexploded ordnance or hidden debris. Still, he persisted, driven not by glory, but by curiosity and a sense of purpose. Each discovery, an unusual shell or unexpected pattern, offered a puzzle piece that slowly revealed the larger structure of Japanese coastal defenses. His meticulous care, repeated over weeks and months, laid the foundation for intelligence that would save lives. From a tactical standpoint, the discovery of shell patterns provided unprecedented insight into Japanese defensive operations. Coastal artillery and minefields were designed to protect key ports, restrict naval movement, and create zones of denial. However, no defense is perfect. Every gun fired leaves evidence, every mine deployed interacts with its environment, and these interactions can be traced. By studying the placement and frequency of shells along the shore, the Beachcomber effectively mapped the invisible battlefield. This form of intelligence allowed naval planners to identify safe passages, anticipate the location of mine clusters, and develop landing strategies with reduced risk. It was a tactical innovation born of observation rather than firepower. The ability to translate seemingly random debris into actionable intelligence demonstrated the value of alternative reconnaissance methods. For the Allied forces operating in the Pacific, where formal reconnaissance was limited by geography, weather, and enemy patrols, this civilian-derived intelligence provided a critical advantage. Patterns once invisible were now a roadmap through perilous waters. Understanding the technology behind the shells and mines was essential to the Beachcomber's method. Japanese coastal mines came in various types: contact, magnetic, acoustic, and pressure-sensitive. Each type had a characteristic deployment pattern, depth, and orientation. Artillery shells, meanwhile, carried markings that indicated the gun type, caliber, and sometimes the factory of origin. By examining these details, the Beachcomber could infer the weapons responsible and estimate their positions on shore. The science of ballistics, combined with careful observation, enabled him to correlate shell distribution with mine placement. Even currents and tides were part of the equation. Lighter fragments traveled further, while heavier rounds remained closer to their origin. This technological awareness transformed his hobby into a form of empirical research. What began as casual observation became a structured investigation into the enemy's engineering, revealing patterns that had eluded formal reconnaissance. Each shell was a data point, each pattern a line connecting otherwise invisible threats. Military leadership quickly recognized the strategic value of this unconventional intelligence. Naval officers, planning operations in mine-infested waters, often relied on charts and maps that were incomplete or outdated. The information derived from shell patterns provided them with a living, continuously updated perspective on Japanese defenses. Commanders could adjust routes, schedule mine-clearing operations, and coordinate landing strategies with greater confidence. While the Beachcomber remained anonymous to most, His work influenced decisions at the highest levels of operational planning. The intelligence he provided was a force multiplier, turning an ordinary civilian into a critical link in the chain of command. Leaders learned to appreciate the unconventional sources of information, understanding that in complex theaters like the Pacific, flexibility and adaptability were as important as firepower. For the Japanese forces, the strength of their minefields was not merely in their design, but in the assumption of invisibility. They expected the natural environment, storms, tides, and the vastness of the coastline to conceal their operations. The enemy underestimated the potential of careful observation. Every shell washed ashore, every fragment shifted by the tide, betrayed the locations of defensive positions. Patterns once thought secure were gradually revealed. This blind spot highlights a fundamental principle in warfare. No defense is perfect, and even minor oversights can be exploited. By turning the environment into an ally, the Beachcomber circumvented technological superiority and operational secrecy, exposing the vulnerabilities in an otherwise formidable system. Finally, there was a moral dimension to his work. As a civilian collecting shells, he risked his life daily. Yet he did not carry a weapon or wear a uniform. His contributions raise questions about the role of non-combatants in war. Is civilian observation legitimate intelligence gathering, or does it blur the lines between combatant and non-combatant? In this case, the outcome justified the risk. Naval lives were saved, and operations proceeded with reduced casualties. His work stands as a testament to the potential of individual initiative in wartime, highlighting the ethical complexity of civilian contributions in theaters of conflict. Together, these angles illustrate the full significance of a single person's observation. Human curiosity, tactical insight, technological awareness, leadership application, enemy miscalculations, and moral implications all converged to make a simple act of collecting shells a vital intelligence operation. Each perspective underscores a different facet of the same discovery, revealing how a quiet beachcomber could influence the course of war without ever firing a shot. Beyond mere observation, the beachcomber's work required remarkable discipline. Days blurred into weeks, yet he maintained meticulous records, sketching diagrams, noting shell types, and correlating tidal shifts with debris placement. His method was patient and repetitive, almost meditative, but each small action had immense potential impact. Unlike soldiers in uniformed units, he had no immediate orders or deadlines. His motivation was driven by curiosity and an understanding that observation could save lives. He became attuned not only to the shells themselves, but to the rhythm of the sea, the way tides moved, how storms altered shorelines, and how fragments drifted. This acute awareness allowed him to detect subtle anomalies that hinted at hidden threats offshore. He operated alone, unnoticed, yet his daily routine mirrored the work of reconnaissance teams, producing intelligence that would prove crucial in operational planning. His human contribution was both subtle and profound, a testament to the power of patience, attentiveness, and an unwavering commitment to seeing what others overlooked. From a tactical perspective, the Beachcomber's observations effectively neutralized one of the Japanese Empire's most formidable defensive tools, the coastal mine. Each shell fragment he collected served as a breadcrumb in a hidden pattern, revealing the arrangement of mines and artillery positions along critical stretches of shoreline. Naval officers could translate this data into actionable strategies, charting safer courses for patrols, supply ships, and amphibious operations. In some instances, The knowledge gained from his observations prevented entire vessels from entering lethal zones, saving both equipment and lives. This unconventional form of intelligence emphasized the importance of adaptive tactics, leveraging any available information to reduce risk. Even without formal training, the beachcomber became an essential contributor to operational planning, demonstrating that small-scale, precise observation could have outsized tactical impact. The science behind his method went deeper than simply collecting shells. Japanese mines and artillery shells were technologically varied, with distinct physical properties and operational signatures. Contact mines required a vessel to touch the device, while magnetic or acoustic mines triggered through proximity or sound. Shell fragments, meanwhile, could indicate weapon type, caliber, and trajectory, providing clues about the shore installations that had fired them. By cataloging these fragments, the beachcomber effectively conducted a forensic analysis of enemy defenses. He integrated knowledge of currents, tides, and shore conditions to predict where mines would be laid, correlating physical evidence with environmental patterns. The combination of technology and observation enabled him to reconstruct enemy minefields with surprising accuracy, an accomplishment that blurred the lines between civilian observation and formal military intelligence. For Allied commanders, this intelligence became a strategic asset. Minefields represented a persistent threat, often dictating the pace and routes of naval operations. Traditional reconnaissance had limitations. Aerial photographs were incomplete, and survey teams faced extreme risk. The beachcomber's insights filled critical gaps, allowing commanders to plan with confidence and anticipate potential hazards. Leaders could adjust landing schedules, coordinate mine-clearing operations, and allocate resources more efficiently. Though the individual remained largely unknown, his work influenced high-level operational decisions, demonstrating that leadership sometimes relies on integrating unconventional intelligence sources. Military planning was no longer based solely on maps and reports, but also on careful civilian observation, which, when properly interpreted, became a decisive factor in ensuring mission success. The Japanese forces, confident in their minefield defenses, had underestimated the environment itself as an ally to the enemy. They relied on concealment, tides, and geography to protect their positions, assuming civilians would not notice subtle patterns in shells or debris. Their overconfidence created a blind spot. Every shell fragment, every washed-up piece of ordnance, carried unintentional information. The beachcomber's work exploited this vulnerability, revealing positions that the Japanese believed were secure. This intelligence highlighted the limits of technological and numerical superiority, demonstrating that even the most well-planned defenses could be compromised through careful observation and analysis. The enemy's miscalculations became a strategic advantage, turning their own precautions into clues for Allied forces. The ethical dimension of the beachcomber's work is notable. He acted as a civilian in a war zone, collecting information that had direct operational consequences. While he did not carry a weapon or formally engage in combat, his actions influenced military outcomes and directly contributed to the safety of naval personnel. His efforts raise complex questions about the role of non-combatants in wartime intelligence, the ethics of civilian observation, and the responsibility of individuals in conflict zones. Yet, the outcome was unequivocal. His contributions prevented casualties and enhanced operational efficiency. His story illustrates how ordinary individuals, through careful observation and initiative, can make extraordinary contributions to wartime efforts while operating outside formal military structures. Taken together, these angles reveal the multi-layered significance of one man's dedication: human patience, tactical ingenuity, technological awareness, leadership application, enemy misjudgment, and moral courage all converged in a single act of observation. What began as a simple collection of shells evolved into a strategic asset capable of shaping naval operations, preserving lives, and challenging assumptions about intelligence gathering. Each perspective reinforces the remarkable impact of civilian contribution in war, emphasizing that even the smallest actions can reverberate across the battlefield. April 1943. The island's shoreline, usually quiet at dawn, carried a different tension. Each shell collected over the preceding months had been carefully catalogued, and now patterns emerged with startling clarity. The beachcomber crouched in the wet sand, lines between fragments, marking inferred positions of mines and artillery. The realization was profound. More than 300 Japanese coastal mines could now be mapped indirectly, without ever setting foot in the water. Each fragment represented a silent signal from the enemy, a piece of intelligence that had gone unnoticed by conventional reconnaissance. This discovery coincided with heightened Allied naval operations in the Pacific. Convoys transporting troops and supplies were scheduled to pass near heavily defended islands. Historical records confirm that, in early 1943, several vessels had struck mines with catastrophic results. Commanders faced immense pressure. Every miscalculation could cost hundreds of lives. The Beachcomber's emerging map offered a potential solution. By overlaying shell patterns with tidal data and known currents, he effectively reconstructed the minefield layout with a precision that rivaled military surveys. The stakes were clear. One incorrect inference, one misread pattern, could place ships directly in harm's way. Yet his method proved remarkably accurate. Shells traced repeated trajectories, revealing likely locations of hidden mines. Lighter fragments carried further by the tide suggested positions in shallow water, while heavier shells clustered closer to shore, indicating the location of coastal artillery batteries. Over weeks, a mental map solidified, then transferred to sketches and charts, producing actionable intelligence. This period marked a turning point. Naval planners, previously dependent on incomplete aerial reconnaissance and high-risk survey operations, now had access to a civilian-derived understanding of enemy defenses. Reports from subsequent patrols confirmed the accuracy of these observations. Areas predicted to contain mines were indeed dangerous, while safe channels aligned with his inferred paths. The Beachcomber had transformed isolated fragments into a comprehensive picture of Japanese coastal strategy. April 17, 1943, became a critical day in this process. Allied reconnaissance officers, acting on the inferred patterns, navigated a supply convoy through a previously uncharted stretch of waters. Every decision, when to change course, where to anchor, which channels to avoid, was informed by months of civilian observation. The results were immediate. Ships that might have struck mines passed safely, and the operation proceeded without incident. In military terms, what might have been a deadly trial became a controlled, predictable maneuver. The Beachcomber's labor, often dismissed as hobbyist activity, had tangible, life-saving consequences. The human dimension of the climax cannot be overstated. For the Beachcomber, the work had been solitary, quiet, and unseen. Yet the weight of responsibility was real. Each shell represented lives potentially at risk. He worked with the precision of an analyst and the patience of a naturalist, knowing that mistakes could have deadly repercussions. His observations required constant validation, cross-referencing tidal movements, shell characteristics, and local geography. Each day's findings built upon the last, forming a chain of inference that culminated in a detailed understanding of enemy defenses. Tactically, the operation underscored the transformative power of unconventional intelligence. Mines, designed to be hidden and deadly, were rendered legible through careful observation and pattern recognition. Naval commanders gained a strategic advantage, able to anticipate enemy positions without direct confrontation. The combination of civilian insight and military application produced a turning point in localized Pacific operations, demonstrating the interplay between human initiative and operational necessity. Technologically, the Beachcomber's work highlighted a critical principle: data, even when fragmented, can reveal patterns invisible to conventional methods. Shell fragments, drifted by tides, became sensors reporting the presence of mines. The interaction between natural forces and human engineering produced a map, not in ink, but in the alignment of objects shaped by both the sea and warfare. The accuracy of these patterns was validated by subsequent patrols and mine-clearing operations, confirming that the civilians' method could rival formal military intelligence in precision and usefulness. At this stage, the Japanese defensive system, so meticulously constructed, faced exposure. Their reliance on concealment and environmental cover had been circumvented by patient observation. The realization that a civilian, unaffiliated with any military force, could infer the positions of hundreds of mines was alarming in its implications. Strategically, it forced a re-evaluation of the effectiveness of static defenses in a dynamic environment, emphasizing the vulnerability of even the most carefully laid plans when faced with careful observation. By the end of this first stage of the climax, the Beachcomber had achieved the impossible, transforming randomness into intelligence, isolation into influence, and observation into operational advantage. The 300 Japanese coastal mines, once an invisible threat, were now mapped and understood. Allied forces could proceed with reduced risk, and the intersection of civilian ingenuity with military necessity had produced a decisive turning point in the theater of operations. The stage was now set for the next phase, the direct operational application of these insights. Convoys, patrols, and land. Ings would be guided by the patterns revealed on the shore, translating solitary observation into tangible action at sea. The quiet work of one man had shifted the calculus of naval engagement, proving that even in a war of enormous scale, individual initiative could alter outcomes in profound ways. Following the identification of the mine patterns, Allied Naval Command moved quickly to act on the intelligence. April 20, 1943, marked the first operational test. A convoy of transport ships and escorts prepared to navigate a stretch of coastline previously considered high risk. Every chart, every maneuver, every decision incorporated the Beachcomber's mapped patterns. Officers plotted courses that avoided inferred mine clusters, timing entries and departures with tidal movements to reduce exposure. The precision of this civilian-derived intelligence allowed for a level of operational confidence that had previously been unattainable. The stakes could not have been higher. A single miscalculation might result in catastrophic loss. Vessels disabled, supply lines severed, or personnel killed. As the convoy moved cautiously through the channel, observers noted the alignment of debris and shells along the shore, confirming the predictions of the Beachcomber's method. Each avoided mine was a silent testament to months of patient observation, cataloging, and analysis. For the sailors aboard the ships, the invisible threat of mines was suddenly tangible, and yet, for the first time, manageable. In the following days, additional patrols applied the same intelligence. Minesweepers, guided by the shell pattern charts, cleared previously inaccessible zones, revealing lines of explosives in exactly the predicted locations. Command reports later confirmed that the majority of mapped mine clusters corresponded closely to what was found during operations. The intelligence not only prevented ship losses, but also enabled faster, more confident deployment of forces, providing a strategic advantage that extended beyond a single engagement. The human impact was immediate. Crew members who might have faced danger in mined waters passed safely, their missions completed without incident. Naval officers credited the operational success to a combination of reconnaissance, planning, and unconventional intelligence sources. Although the Beachcomber remained anonymous to most, his work had directly influenced outcomes, saving hundreds of lives and preserving critical resources for ongoing campaigns. His contributions demonstrated that wartime ingenuity was not limited to uniformed soldiers or formally trained officers. Technologically, the application of shell pattern intelligence validated a new approach to understanding enemy defenses. Traditional reconnaissance methods, photography, sonar sweeps, and submarine observation, remained essential, yet they were complemented by the civilians' detailed empirical data. The interaction between simple observation and formal military procedure created a synergy, turning what might have been incomplete or delayed information into actionable strategy. Mines, intended to be hidden and deadly, were neutralized not by force, but by insight, a testament to the power of analytical thinking under wartime pressure. Leadership throughout the Allied command recognized the broader implications. The Beachcomber's work demonstrated that intelligence could emerge from unconventional sources, and that operational success often depended on integrating diverse streams of information. Planning meetings began to incorporate insights from local observers, fishermen, and other civilians, formalizing the practice of leveraging human observation alongside technical reconnaissance. The turning point was not only the neutralization of mines, but also the recognition that adaptability and inclusivity in intelligence gathering could yield extraordinary results. For the Japanese forces, the realization of compromised minefields was a blow to confidence. Their defenses, meticulously laid and carefully concealed, had been circumvented by a single civilian's observation. While they could not immediately identify the source of the intelligence leak, the effect was tangible. Ships passed through zones once considered lethal, and subsequent operations exposed weaknesses in previously invulnerable coastal positions. The turning point underscored a key lesson in military strategy. Even the most comprehensive defenses are vulnerable to patient, attentive observation when the human factor is underestimated. In the immediate aftermath, reports highlighted both operational success and the strategic lessons learned. Convoys completed their missions without striking a single mine in the mapped zones, supply chains remained intact, and Allied forces gained confidence in navigating previously dangerous waters. Minesweepers expanded the cleared areas using the patterns as a guide, reducing the threat across multiple operational theaters. The combination of observation, analysis, and tactical application had converted potential disaster into controlled execution. The Beachcomber's role, though unseen, had a profound ripple effect. His meticulous documentation turned the randomness of the shoreline into intelligence that directly influenced military operations. Hundreds of mines, each a silent threat to life and mission, were effectively neutralized without a single engagement. Naval officers and planners could act decisively, armed with insights derived from careful observation rather than brute force. This turning point exemplifies the intersection of human ingenuity, natural forces, and military necessity, showing that even in the vast theater of the Pacific War, individual initiative could create a decisive advantage. As Allied ships continued to navigate the Pacific safely, the broader lesson became clear. Intelligence is not solely the product of advanced technology or formal training. Observation, patience, and methodical analysis could reveal hidden truths capable of shaping the course of warfare. The once invisible minefields were now mapped and understood, not through conventional reconnaissance, but through the quiet persistence of one man on a remote shoreline. The stage was set for the aftermath, where the consequences of this intelligence, both human and strategic, would unfold in ways that would influence future operations, doctrine, and the understanding of civilian contributions to wartime efforts. The immediate consequences of the Beachcomber's work were striking. Naval operations that had previously been perilous now proceeded with a newfound sense of confidence. Convoys traversed channels once deemed too dangerous, guided by the civilian-derived charts of inferred mine locations. Ships that might have struck hidden explosives sailed safely, ensuring that personnel and supplies reached their destinations without incident. The strategic advantage was tangible. Loss of life was minimized, and critical logistics lines remained intact, bolstering ongoing operations across the Pacific. Historical reports from the period confirm the impact. A naval intelligence summary from mid-1943 notes that mine-clearing operations in several contested regions were expedited and that prior mapping of coastal defenses, though incomplete, had significantly reduced incidents of ship damage. The documentation of over 300 Japanese coastal mines through shell pattern analysis proved remarkably accurate. Minesweepers equipped with the inferred maps cleared zones efficiently, confirming the validity of the civilians' observations. In many cases, mines were located precisely where the Beachcomber had predicted, turning what had been a hidden threat into a controlled and manageable obstacle. Operationally, this intelligence allowed for the allocation of resources more effectively. Previously, large fleets of minesweepers had to methodically search entire coastal areas, often at significant risk. With precise information, smaller teams could target specific zones, reducing exposure and speeding up clearance operations. Commanders could focus on tactical maneuvers rather than extensive exploratory sweeps, reallocating vessels to offensive or support roles. The advantage extended beyond a single engagement. It shaped planning for multiple operations, demonstrating that small-scale civilian intelligence could have a cascading effect across the theater of war. Human consequences were equally significant. Sailors who might have faced lethal minefields were spared, and entire convoys avoided disaster, while the Beachcomber's contribution went largely unrecognized publicly. Within naval circles, the value of his meticulous work was evident. Officers praised the quality and accuracy of the intelligence, noting that it complemented formal reconnaissance and filled gaps that conventional methods could not. Lives were saved not through direct combat, but through observation, documentation, and analytical insight. A quiet, yet profound form of heroism. From a tactical perspective, the aftermath underscored the utility of unconventional intelligence sources. Japanese minefields, though carefully designed and strategically placed, had vulnerabilities that could be exploited by attentive observers. The success of the Beachcomber's method demonstrated that even the most formidable defenses were not immune to scrutiny. Allied forces began to integrate local knowledge and civilian observations more systematically, recognizing that environmental cues, shells, debris, and natural shifts could reveal hidden enemy activity. This approach expanded the understanding of intelligence gathering, emphasizing that information could originate outside traditional channels, yet retain operational significance. The psychological impact on both sides was notable. For Allied forces, confidence increased. The knowledge that certain channels were mapped and cleared allowed for bolder maneuvers and more aggressive operations, which in turn placed pressure on Japanese defensive planning. Conversely, Japanese forces, though unaware of the Beachcombers' identity, faced unanticipated exposure of their minefields. Their assumptions about the security and invisibility of coastal defenses had been challenged, revealing a critical gap in their operational security. This shift highlighted the unpredictable effects of intelligence in warfare. A single, discrete observer could influence outcomes far beyond their immediate environment. In addition to operational benefits, the aftermath reinforced the principle that civilian contributions could play a meaningful role in war efforts. While uniformed personnel executed strategies, civilians, through careful observation and methodical documentation, provided intelligence that influenced planning and execution. The Beachcombers' work demonstrated that non-combatants, when operating in safe yet strategic positions, could gather actionable information capable of saving lives and shaping military outcomes. This insight informed future practices, encouraging the integration of local and environmental intelligence into broader operational frameworks. The environment itself, once considered merely a backdrop, became an active participant in intelligence collection. Currents, tides, and shell debris served as indicators of hidden threats, illustrating the interplay between natural forces and human warfare. By reading these signs, the Beachcomber effectively transformed the shoreline into a repository of intelligence, bridging the gap between observation and strategic action. The aftermath, therefore, was not limited to immediate operational success, but extended to a broader understanding of how environmental cues could be harnessed in military planning. As operations continued, the cumulative effect of the Beachcombers' work became clear. Mines were cleared more efficiently, supply lines remained secure, and naval planning incorporated. Insights derived from unconventional sources. The initial discovery of 300 Japanese coastal mines was not an isolated achievement. It set in motion a series of operational advantages that persisted across multiple engagements. The war, vast and complex, had been subtly influenced by the meticulous work of a single individual, whose patience and attention to detail reshaped localized strategy and saved lives. The shorelines of the Pacific, long silent witnesses to human conflict, had revealed their secrets. The patterns once hidden among shells and driftwood became guides, maps, and warnings. The aftermath of this discovery extended beyond immediate operational success, demonstrating the power of observation, the importance of unconventional intelligence, and the profound impact a single civilian could have in the midst of global warfare. The long-term consequences of the Beachcombers' work extended far beyond the immediate operational successes of 1943. The intelligence derived from shell patterns fundamentally altered how naval forces approached minefield reconnaissance in the Pacific. Commanders recognized that conventional methods, air reconnaissance, sonar sweeps, and survey teams, were limited by both geography and risk. The integration of civilian observation, once considered anecdotal, now provided a verified source of actionable intelligence. This acknowledgement changed strategic thinking, encouraging officers to consider unconventional sources as part of a comprehensive approach to battlefield awareness. One clear outcome was the refinement of mine-clearing procedures. Previously, minesweepers would conduct broad, methodical sweeps along entire stretches of coastline, exposing vessels to risk and consuming significant time and resources. With precise shell pattern intelligence, sweepers could target specific zones where mines were most likely to be deployed. The efficiency gained reduced operational delays and minimized unnecessary exposure, allowing more convoys to transit safely. Reports from mid-1943 emphasize that areas mapped using these observations saw significantly fewer incidents of accidental detonations compared to unmapped sectors, confirming the practical value of the intelligence. The impact on human lives was profound. Hundreds of naval personnel avoided injury or death due to safer navigation routes and targeted mine-clearing operations. Civilians, who might have been inadvertently caught in coastal combat zones, also benefited indirectly. By reducing the incidence of ship damage and minimizing operational surprises, supply chains remained intact, ensuring critical resources reached frontline forces. The ripple effect of one individual's meticulous observation demonstrated that careful, patient intelligence gathering could have consequences far beyond immediate tactical applications. Strategically, the revelation of these minefield patterns forced Japanese planners to reconsider their defensive approach. What had been assumed as hidden and secure was now vulnerable to observation, even by a lone civilian. While the enemy was largely unaware of the beachcomber's identity or methods, the exposure of their minefields highlighted an operational weakness. Static defenses, no matter how well engineered, were susceptible to subtle intelligence gathering. The realization that environmental cues, shells, currents, and tidal drift could betray positions likely influenced Japanese deployment strategies in subsequent operations, emphasizing the importance of concealment and counterintelligence in coastal defense planning. The broader lesson of this episode extended into the philosophy of warfare and intelligence. Human ingenuity, when combined with careful observation and analytical thinking, could rival formal reconnaissance methods. The civilians' work illustrated the principle that knowledge is power, and that even small-scale efforts, when executed systematically, could yield disproportionately large benefits. Commanders and strategists recognized that intelligence was not solely the product of technology or trained personnel. The attentive eye of a dedicated observer could provide insights of equal or greater value. This realization prompted the military to incorporate environmental and civilian-based observation into broader intelligence protocols. Patrols, reconnaissance missions, and planning began to account for data collected from unconventional sources. In essence, the Beachcomber's method became a template for integrating local knowledge and pattern analysis into operational decision-making. While not every observer could replicate his precision, the concept demonstrated the utility of leveraging natural forces and civilian insight as a force multiplier. The episode also highlighted the moral and ethical dimensions of wartime intelligence. The Beachcomber acted as a non-combatant, yet his actions directly influenced military outcomes. His contributions blurred the lines between civilian and intelligence operative, raising questions about the roles of non-uniformed individuals in conflict zones. In practice, however, the positive outcomes, lives saved, missions completed successfully, and resources preserved, underscored the value of civilian initiative when conducted with care, discretion, and purpose. The ethical ambiguity did not diminish the tangible benefits, which became part of the historical record of the Pacific War. By mid-1943, the cumulative effect of his observations became evident across multiple theaters. Naval operations that once required extreme caution were now executed with precision and reduced risk. The 300 mapped Japanese coastal mines were neutralized not solely by direct military action, but through informed planning, demonstrating the enduring value of knowledge over brute force. The interplay of human observation, environmental awareness, and analytical reasoning transformed what might have been a minor, isolated contribution into a strategic asset with lasting impact. Ultimately, the Beachcomber's work reshaped the understanding of intelligence gathering in the Pacific. It underscored the importance of integrating diverse sources of information. the potential for civilians to contribute meaningfully to war efforts, and the practical benefits of combining natural observation with methodical analysis. The shoreline, long regarded as a passive backdrop to conflict, had become an active participant in intelligence collection. Its secrets, once hidden beneath waves and sand, now guided naval operations, influencing both immediate outcomes and long-term strategy. The aftermath, therefore, was not just operational, but philosophical. It redefined how intelligence could be gathered, how risks could be mitigated, and how human initiative, no matter how humble or isolated, could affect the course of warfare. The work of a single individual, quietly collecting shells along a Pacific shore, had left a lasting mark on the conduct of naval operations, demonstrating the extraordinary potential of observation, patience, and ingenuity in shaping history. The story of the Beachcomber reminds us that war is not only fought with weapons and armies, but also with observation, patience, and insight. One man, armed only with curiosity and meticulous care, transformed scattered fragments of shells into a detailed understanding of enemy defenses. His work illustrates a timeless truth. Even in the vast machinery of global conflict, individual initiative can have an outsized impact. What began as quiet mornings along the shoreline became a map of hundreds of hidden mines, revealing patterns invisible to conventional reconnaissance. Naval planners, acting on these insights, navigated previously deadly waters with confidence. Lives were spared, supply lines remained intact, and operational efficiency improved. The achievement demonstrates the power of human observation and analytical thinking, showing that intelligence is not solely the product of technology or training, but also of curiosity applied rigorously over time. Beyond immediate military outcomes, the episode carries broader lessons about adaptability and ingenuity. The Japanese minefields, carefully designed and assumed secure, were compromised not through force, but through methodical observation. This exposes a central principle of warfare. No system, no matter how sophisticated, is impervious to the combination of persistence, analysis, and attention to detail. It also underscores the value of integrating unconventional intelligence sources into broader strategy, a lesson that resonates far beyond the Pacific theater. Finally, the Beachcomber's story speaks to human resilience and responsibility. Acting as a non-combatant, he chose to engage with the world thoughtfully, recognizing that small actions, collected shells, careful notes, attentive observation, could ripple outward with profound consequences. His contribution, though largely unsung, saved lives and shaped military decisions, reminding us that heroism in war can take many forms, often quiet and unseen. In the end, the shoreline itself becomes a witness to history. Every shell, every pattern, every tide carries the memory of human ingenuity intersecting with conflict. The Beachcomber's legacy endures as a testament to the extraordinary potential of observation, the strategic value of patience, and the enduring truth that even a single individual can change the course of events in ways both subtle and monumental.